This happened to me last year, on my birthday. I had a few friends to sleep in my 6-man tent, and whilst I was setting the tent up, my dad came into the garden and told me and my friends to be careful, as he had seen a shady-looking man in a baseball cap slowly walking up and down my street, like he was checking out my house. It was about 1 a.m. when me and my friends were sitting on the patio at the table, just talking about random stuff, when I heard a rustling in my neighbor's garden. I didn't find this too unusual, because it was the summer and I lived in a rural area of the UK, and we had hedgehogs living nearby. But then, I noticed the shape of someone's body emerging from the bush. It was a man in a baseball cap. One of my friends asked what the hell it was doing there, but there was no answer. And we asked again, and he just chuckled and left through my neighbor's gate. It was later on, at about 4 a.m., and most of my friends were asleep, except for me, and my slightly older friend who was in the same year as high school as me. We were whispering to each other, as we were trying to not wake everyone up. I heard my neighbor's fence rattle, as if someone had hopped over it, and a few seconds later, we see a figure move past the window of the tent. I could barely make it out, but I distinctly remember seeing a hat in the moonlit window. He moved round to the back of the tent, and so I decided to wake everyone up and run back inside my house and into the living room. A good half hour passed when I heard police sirens outside. This wasn't possible as my mom was asleep and my dad worked nights. I looked outside to see 3 police officers in my garden where the tents were, and my neighbor was talking to another officer. After a few minutes of watching through my back door window, the police walked out of my garden, with a man in his early 40s in handcuffs. I saw my neighbor, and he gestured for me to come outside. My friends followed behind, and we spoke to him. Note that my neighbor is in his late 80s, and he lives alone. He said that he was getting a glass of water from his kitchen when he saw his security light turn on in his garden. He quickly glanced over and saw a man hop over his fence and into my garden. He then called the police, and they said he would come over. After telling me this, a police officer walked over and informed me that the man they had arrested was a burglar who had broken into multiple houses in the local area. What he said next makes me shiver. They said they found him crouched down in the corner of the tent with a large knife. He then advised me and my friends to get our stuff and sleep in the living room. By this time, my mom had been woken up by all the commotion, and she had been given the same information. She called my dad and told them what happened. I don't think I'll ever sleep in a tent again. A few years ago, my brother would get a call on his cell phone around 2 to 3 a.m. every night. He would answer, and it was this hellish-sounding noise, like static mixed with screams. He changed his cell number after a month of this, and it stopped. Then, after a week or so, it began again, the exact same noise, exact same time. Finally, one day he decided to backdial the call. It was an old man who had no clue what he was talking about, and still the calls persisted. If he didn't answer, it would call a few more times. No messages were ever left. He decided to say screw it, ended his contract with his phone company and switched to a new one, and then got another new number. You guessed it, the screaming static calls continued after a short delay. By this time he was terrified every night, unsure of why this was happening. He backed out of the number again and got a different person. Around this time he lost his job and his phone. The calls stopped, of course. His phone was disconnected now. So one day, my dad and mom asked me to listen to this weird message she got on her home phone. It was a static screaming. We showed my brother and he was freaking out. He backed out of the number again and it said the number was disconnected this time. Never heard from it again after that. A few years ago, I was home alone at nighttime. I was watching TV in the living room when I heard the doorbell ring. Whenever I hear the doorbell ring, especially when I'm home alone, I am cautious to answer it. I walk up to the peephole without turning on the porch light, so they don't know if anyone is home or not, and look through. It's really dark, but I can see a small figure, more like a black blob, I don't know its definite shape, but it had to be around 3 to 4 feet, doing a dancing motion, dipping down and up its oscillating arms outward. Think of a person moving their arms like wings gracefully. It was dark outside, but this figure was more opaque, so I could see this going on. After a few seconds, I stopped looking through the peephole because it was too freaky to look at. I regained some courage and looked back through it, and whatever it was gone. To this day, I still don't know what it was, and I get freaked out just thinking about it.
My ex-wife had several weird experiences. I'll just relate this one. I'm at work one day when she called me out of the blue. We were still married at the time. She usually did not call me during the day because she worked the night shift. She tells me to call my friend Danny and to make sure he and his family are okay. When I asked why, she told me that she had a dream, but she couldn't remember it. But that I should call Danny and make sure he's okay. So I called Danny and checked in with him. I told him about my wife's dream. He's mildly amused, but tells me that he and his family are fine, and to thank my wife for her concern. I called her back and let her know that all is well. I found out later that within half an hour of my phone call to Danny, he got another call from his uncle in Florida to tell him that Danny's son had hanged himself.
I was home alone, sitting by my computer and watching YouTube, when I see a shadow on the wall behind my monitor. I look over my shoulder, out of the window behind me. The window looks out to our front yard from the office room I was in. I see nothing out of the ordinary, but when I look back at the wall, the shadow is gone. Seconds later, it's back, but only for a moment. It appeared to be the shadow of a head. Being the paranoid teenager I am, I began to panic. I stood up and then walked over to my window. My dog is usually in the front yard waiting for my dad to get back, so I couldn't see him. Then I noticed something. The bolt we put on our gate to stop it from opening was lying on the ground. This meant that someone was here, or someone is here. I left the office room and crept down the hallway to see if my dog was in the backyard. But before I even left the hallway, I could see a man looking through the window of our back door. He was wearing jeans and a big hoodie. He doesn't see me as I try to creep back into the office, and a loud knock came from the front door. No way the man in the backyard would have been able to get to the front door so fast. It would have to be someone else. More knocks came from the door, and soon the voice of a middle-aged sounding man comes from the other side. "Hello?" I didn't say anything. "I saw you before." At this point, I'm sweating buckets. I check my pockets for my phone, and I don't have it. I peer into the doorway of the office room, and it's there on the computer desk. Going in there and getting it back means being seen by the man outside. I quickly tiptoe into the room and grab my phone. On my way back into the hall, I see the man's face looking into the room. He looked like a normal guy, but his eyes were shaking left and right short distances at an extremely fast rate. He also had his mouth wide open in a smile with his tongue hanging out. Pure primal terror rushed through my body when I saw that face. I scream, "I'm calling the cops!" and begin to dial. I hear loud, fast-paced footsteps from the driveway. The cops came in and no one was around. They dusted for fingerprints and the results were unsatisfying. The police said they were wearing gloves. I gave them my description of the men and they left. I'm now posting what happened on Reddit while my dad is calling family to tell them what happened. My dog is missing. Update. It's dark now. A lot of family members are visiting at the moment. Up until the family arrived, I've been looking for my dog, with my dad, around the area I live in. I haven't found him yet. I'll go looking again tomorrow morning. I really hope it didn't take him. I'll keep updating. Update. I got a phone call this morning from an elderly woman who lived down the road. My dog wandered into her front yard this morning and she called the number on her collar. She lived down the road. I picked up my dog and he's home now. Thank you for caring. I'm going to try my best to stay inside from now on until the guys are found. I don't feel comfortable walking around alone. And those are 5 true horror stories. Thank you all for watching, and if you enjoyed, please leave a like down below. Perhaps comment, I'd really appreciate it. Maybe this will become a series in the future if you guys liked it enough. See you next time.